Jose Ramirez never liked Mondays. But this Monday, March 14, 2014, changed his life forever, and the life of all of New York City. The old janitor descended into the basement of the Parkview Heights apartment complex in Brooklyn at exactly 6:47 a.m., as he always did. The boiler room needed to be checked before the workday began. Jose limped on his left leg, an old injury from construction work that flared up in damp weather. The flashlight in his hand illuminated the familiar outlines of pipes and valves. Before we begin the story, please write which city you are from. We are very interested in where you are watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your rating. But something was wrong. In the far corner behind a broken rack that should have been taken out a month ago, there was a strange crack. Jose moved closer. It was a sheet of plywood painted the same color as the wall. It had been there for years. The paint was peeling, and the edges were darkened from moisture. "Strange," Jose muttered in Spanish. In 12 years of working in this building, he thought he knew every corner. The plywood gave way on the third try. Behind it was a 3-by-3-meter niche. The air inside was musty and stale. The beam of the flashlight slid across the shelves along the wall. Something white was visible on the top shelf. 2 skulls stared straight at him with empty eye sockets. Jose ran out of the basement as fast as his injured leg would allow. With trembling fingers, he dialed 911. "Police? I found human remains in the basement of a house on Parkview Heights, 712. 15 minutes later, the basement was swarming with police. Yellow crime scene tape, camera flashes, forensic technicians in white jumpsuits. Jose sat on the steps, wrapped in a blanket given to him by a young officer. He was still shaking. Detective Sarah Thompson arrived an hour later. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her gaze sharp and professional. 8 years in the cold case unit had taught her to spot important clues. "Mr. Ramirez, I'm Detective Thompson. Tell me what you found." Jose repeated his story. Sarah listened, taking notes in her notebook. Then she went down to the basement. Stone passed the information he had gathered to Anna Morelli in 2012. But Victor Crane, a.k.a. Grant, had died of a heart attack a month earlier. It seemed that the truth had died with him. Let's go back to 2014. Detective Sarah Thompson was sitting in the police department archives studying a 15-year-old case. The yellowed pages of O'Brien's reports, faded photographs from the brothers' last known location. Her phone rang. It was Detective Chang. "Sarah, we have DNA confirmation. It's definitely the Morelli brothers. And something else. There are signs of binding on the bones. They were tortured before they died." Sarah felt her heart sink. These young men had been through hell. "What about the symbol on the wall?" "A phoenix? I checked. It was the logo of Phoenix Capital, Victor Grant's company, also known as Victor Crane." The puzzle was starting to come together. Sarah decided to visit Michael O'Brien. The old detective lived in a small house in Queens. He had a gray beard and tired eyes, but his memory was sharp as a razor. "I knew Crane was involved," O'Brien said, pouring Sarah a cup of coffee. "But I couldn't prove it. He was too careful." "Tell me about the brothers. What were they like?" O'Brien took out an old folder. There were photographs inside. Marco and Thomas at their college graduation, smiling, full of hope. Good guys. Marco was the older one, responsible, always protective of his younger brother. Thomas was a dreamer, an idealist. He believed that technology would change the world for the better. And their parents? Giovanni Morelli was a genius. His algorithms were decades ahead of their time. Elena taught math and supported her husband. They were the perfect family, until Crane came into their lives. O'Brien told the story he had pieced together. Giovanni and Crane met in 1989 at a cryptography conference. Crane was a businessman looking for promising technologies. Giovanni was a scientist in need of funding. They founded SecureNet in 1990. Everything went well for the first 3 years. The company won contracts and grew. But Crane wanted more. He was negotiating with the Pentagon to sell the technology for military purposes. Giovanni was a pacifist, O'Brien explained. He created technology to protect people's privacy, not to spy on them. They had a falling out. Crane made threats. A month later, there was an accident. You think Crane killed them? I'm sure of it, but I couldn't prove it, and 5 years later, he killed his sons. Sarah returned to the station with new information. She decided to check the financial records. If Crane hired killers, there had to be records. Young analyst David Kim spent the whole night at his computer. Detective Thompson, I found something. On September 12, 1999, $100,000 in cash was withdrawn from the Phoenix Capital account. Officially, it was for operating expenses. $100,000, enough to hire professionals. And that's not all. A week after the brothers disappeared, Cybercore Industries, the company that bought Morelli's patent, transferred $5 million to Phoenix Capital for consulting services. $5 million, the price of the patent that Crane couldn't steal from Giovanni, but got after his son's death. Sarah decided to talk to Crane's son. Alexander Crane, 35 years old, managed what was left of his father's empire. His office was on Park Avenue, overlooking Central Park. Detective Thompson, I didn't know the Morelli brothers, Alexander said. Tall, smooth hands, expensive suit, but fear in his eyes. But your father did. My father died 2 years ago. I know, but his company's documents are still valid, and they point to a connection with the brothers' disappearance. Alexander stood up and walked over to the window. You don't understand. My father was a complicated man. Complicated? Paranoid, cruel. He believed that everyone wanted to steal from him. After Giovanni Morelli died, my father changed. He became obsessed with his technology. What do you know about Project Phoenix? Alexander flinched. How do you... It was in Marco Morelli's correspondence. Alexander was silent for a long time. Then he took a folder out of the safe. After my father died, I found this. I didn't know what to do with it. The folder contained documents, the Phoenix Project plan. Crane wanted to create a total surveillance system using Giovanni's algorithms, sell it to governments around the world. The Morelli brothers were the last obstacle. There are names here, Sarah said, studying the documents. Nikolai Volkov, Sergei Petrov, who were they? I don't know. My father worked with the Russians in the 90s. Maybe they carried out sensitive assignments for him. Sarah realized they were assassins. She checked the names against the Interpol database. Volkov and Petrov, former KGB agents, had been involved in eliminating undesirables in the 90s. Both had been killed in a shootout in Moscow in 2001. But there was a third man, Mikhail Sokolov, their accomplice. And he was alive. What's more, he was living in New York under the name Michael Sokol, the owner of a Russian restaurant in Brighton Beach. Sarah and 2 officers arrived at the Moscow restaurant in the evening. Sokolov, a 60-year-old man with a gray mustache, greeted them calmly. I've been waiting for you for 15 years, he said in Russian, then switched to English with a strong accent. I knew you would come one day. At the police station, Sokolov told them everything. Crane had hired them through an intermediary. $100,000 to eliminate the Morelli brothers. Volkov and Petrov did the job. Sokolov was the driver. We picked them up near their house. We told them Crane wanted to talk. They got into the car willingly. We drove them to that house in Brooklyn. Crane rented the basement through a front company. What happened next? Sokolov lowered his head. Crane wanted the code to their father's Swiss bank account. He tortured them. The older one, Marco, remained silent. So did the younger one. They were protecting something more important than money. What exactly? I don't know. Crane asked about some files, about evidence. The brothers said that everything was hidden and would be revealed if anything happened to them. Crane got angry. He ordered. Sokolov fell silent. I didn't kill them. Volkov and Petrov did. I just helped hide the bodies. Crane said that if anyone found out, we'd all be killed. Why didn't you run away? Crane had us on the hook. He had evidence of our other work. And then Volkov and Petrov died. I realized it was Crane who got rid of them. I went into hiding, opened a restaurant, and lived quietly. Are you ready to testify? Yes. I'm old. I have nothing to lose. Those boys, they didn't deserve to die like that. Sarah returned to Alexander Crane with new information. He turned pale after hearing Sokolov's story. My God, my father really was a monster. Mr. Crane, your father's documents mention a safe deposit box, number 712, at the First National Bank. Do you know anything about it? Alexander nodded. My father left me the key, but I never opened the box. I was afraid of what I might find. We need that key. Alexander took a small key with a tag out of the safe. Number 712. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the First National Bank with a search warrant. The manager showed her into the vault. Box 712 was large, the size of a suitcase. Inside were documents, photographs, and an old tape recorder. Sarah turned on the tape recorder. Victor Crane's voice filled the room. This recording was made on September 15, 1999. The Morelli brothers have been eliminated. Project Phoenix can proceed. Giovanni was a fool. He didn't understand the potential of his invention. His sons inherited his stubbornness. I had to act decisively. Next came technical details, names of accomplices, and amounts of bribes. Crane documented his crimes, probably to blackmail his accomplices. Among the photos was one that stood out. Giovanni and Elena Morelli, with little Marco and Thomas. A happy family on a picnic. On the back was written, To Victor from Friends. We look forward to a long partnership. 1991. Sarah felt nauseous. Crane had kept a photo of the family he had destroyed. The documents included Giovanni Morelli's will, a genuine will. He left his sons not only the patent, but also the SecureNet shares that Crane had hidden. According to modern estimates, these shares would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And the last document, a letter from Marco Morelli, dated September 11, 1999, the day before he disappeared. Mr. Crane, we know what you did to our parents. We have proof, recordings of phone conversations, documents about the bribery of the expert who investigated the breaks. We are willing not to go public in exchange for the SecureNet shares that are rightfully ours. You have a week to think about it. If anything happens to us, copies of these documents will be sent to the FBI and the press. Marco and Thomas Morelli. But the brothers underestimated Crane's cruelty. He didn't wait a week. Sarah gathered all the evidence. The 15-year-old case was solved. But Crane was dead, as were Volkov and Petrov. Only Sokolov remained. The trial of Mikhail Sokolov began in October 2014. He pleaded guilty to complicity and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Given his age, it was effectively a life sentence. Alexander Crane publicly disowned his father. He transferred all of Phoenix Capital's assets to a fund to help victims of crime. Anna Morelli flew in from Italy for her cousin's funeral. The brothers were buried next to their parents in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. Hundreds of people attended the ceremony. Colleagues, friends, even strangers who were touched by the story. Christina Vargas, who never married, placed her engagement ring on Marco's coffin. I waited 15 years for you, she whispered. Now you are free. After the funeral, Sarah Thompson thought the case was closed. But a week later, a lawyer representing Anna Morelli called. Detective, we found something in the brothers' belongings. I think you should see it. In the lawyer's office, Anna held an old notebook in her hands. It was in a box with Thomas's university textbooks, between the physics pages. Sarah opened the notebook. Thomas's handwriting was small and neat. The dates were August and September 1999. August 23rd. Marco found something strange in my father's documents. The accounts don't add up. It looks like Crane has been cheating my dad from the beginning. August 28th. Hacked into my father's old computer. Found some encrypted files. If we're right, Crane isn't just a thief. He's a murderer. September 5th. Marco wants to go to the police. I say we need hard evidence. Crane is too powerful. And the last entry, September 11th. Meeting tomorrow? Marco thinks Crane will make a deal. I'm not so sure. Hid copies of all the documents where Crane will never find them. If something goes wrong, the truth will come out anyway. Sarah reread the last sentence. Anna, did the brothers tell you about any hiding places? No, but Thomas loved puzzles. He used to organize treasure hunts for the family when he was a child. Sarah returned to the station with her notebook. Where could Thomas have hidden the documents? The brothers' apartment had been sold, and the company's office had long since been rebuilt. The answer came unexpectedly. Jose Ramirez, the janitor who found the bodies, came to the station. Detective, I remembered something. In the basement, next to that room, there's another niche. It's small behind the pipes. I thought maybe it's worth checking out. Sarah and the forensic team returned to the basement of the house on Parkview Heights. There was indeed a niche behind the rusty pipes. Inside was a metal box sealed in plastic. The box contained computer disks, bank transfer printouts, and an audio cassette. Sarah inserted the tape into an old tape recorder at the station. It was Victor Crane's voice, a recording of a telephone conversation. Giovanni is becoming a problem. We need to resolve this issue radically. A second voice with a Russian accent. That will cost extra. Pay whatever it takes. The main thing is that it looks like an accident. The date of the recording was May 3rd, 1994, 2 weeks before Morelli's parents died. The discs contained SecureNet financial documents. Crane had been siphoning money through shell companies from day one. Giovanni got crumbs, while his inventions brought in millions. But the most important document was the last one. Giovanni's patent for a new algorithm, dated June 1994. It was never registered due to the inventor's death, but according to the law, the rights belonged to his heirs. Sarah contacted a patent office. An expert examined the documents. Detective, this is revolutionary technology even by today's standards. If it had been patented in 1994, the Morelli brothers would be billionaires. Anna Morelli, as the sole heir, obtained the rights to the patent. She sold it to a cybersecurity company for $300 million. I'm going to set up a fund in the Morelli brothers' name, she told Sarah, to help families of missing persons. Marco and Thomas would have wanted it. The story of the Morelli brothers made the news. Journalists dug up new details. It turned out that Crane was involved in the disappearance of several other people, competitors, and former partners. The FBI launched a large-scale investigation. Alexander Crane provided all of his father's archives. Evidence of money laundering, bribery of officials, and industrial espionage was found. Sokolov gave additional testimony from prison. He recalled that Crane had mentioned other projects in Chicago and Los Angeles. The FBI found 3 more unsolved disappearances linked to Crane. In December 2014, Sarah received a promotion. Michael O'Brien attended the ceremony. "You finished what I couldn't," said the old detective. "The Morelli brothers can rest in peace." Jose Ramirez became a local celebrity. Journalists interviewed him, and his neighbors treated him with new respect. The management company raised his salary and offered him the position of senior caretaker. But Jose declined. "I'm a simple man. I do simple work. I just happen to be in the right place." The Morelli Foundation awarded him a $100,000 prize. Jose sent most of the money to his family in Mexico. Cristina Vargas started a small IT company and named it Technologies in honor of Marco Morelli. He always dreamed of having his own business. Now his dream lives on. On the anniversary of the discovery of the remains, the mayor of New York unveiled a memorial plaque on the house where the brothers had lived. Marco and Thomas Morelli, sons, brothers, friends, their search for justice cost them their lives, but the truth prevailed. Sarah stood in the crowd watching the ceremony. Anna Morelli was standing next to her. "You know, there's a saying in Italy," Anna said. "The truth is like butter. It always rises to the top. Sometimes it takes time, 15 years in this case, but the truth always wins." 2 years later, a book about the case was published. The author, an investigative journalist, revealed new details. It turned out that the Morelli brothers weren't the only ones who suspected Crane. Several SecureNet employees tried to warn Giovanni, but he trusted his partner too much. Crane's former secretary, 80-year-old Margaret Wilson, said, "Mr. Crane was charming on the outside, but cold as ice on the inside. I saw him destroy people who got in his way. The Morelli brothers were brave. Too brave." The technology created by Giovanni Morelli truly changed the world. His algorithms form the basis of modern data protection systems. But unlike Crane's plans, they protect people's privacy rather than violating it. In 2017, the Morelli Brothers Foundation helped solve 12 cold cases of missing persons. Anna Morelli was personally involved in every investigation. "It's the least I can do for my cousin's memory." Alexander Crane completely broke with his father's past. He changed his last name, moved to another state, and became involved in charity work. In an interview, he said, "I can't atone for my father's sins, but I can try to make the world a little better. Every day I think about the Morelli brothers. They were my age. They could have been my friends in another life." Mikhail Sokolov died in prison in 2018. Before his death, he wrote a letter to Anna Morelli. "Forgive an old sinner. I cannot bring your cousins back. But I want you to know that they died heroes. They didn't break down or betray each other. I've never met people like that before, or since." The house on Parkview Heights was demolished in 2019. A small park was built in its place. In the center is a monument to the Morelli brothers. 2 bronze silhouettes looking into the future. Sarah Thompson often visited this park. The Morelli brothers' case changed her. She realized that behind every unsolved disappearance there was a family tragedy. Years of waiting and hope. In 2020, at a conference on cold cases, Sarah gave a presentation. The Morelli brothers waited 15 years for justice. Their killer thought time would erase the traces of his crime. But the truth has a way of coming out, sometimes thanks to the persistence of detectives, sometimes thanks to chance, and sometimes thanks to a simple janitor who happened to be in the right place at the right time. The story ended. The Morelli brothers found peace. Their killers were punished, but the echoes of this tragedy continue to reverberate, reminding us that the truth, even when buried deep underground, will eventually come to light. Jose Ramirez still works as a janitor. Every morning he goes down into the basements of New York City buildings, checks the boilers, and cleans up trash. And sometimes, very rarely, he thinks about that morning in March 2014 when his flashlight illuminated 2 skulls on a shelf. "God led me there," he says, "so that the brothers could finally come home." And now a question for you, dear viewers. After everything you've heard, what do you think? If the Morelli brothers had gone straight to the police with their initial suspicions without trying to blackmail Crane, would they still be alive? Or would Crane have found a way to get rid of them, just like he got rid of their parents? Write in the comments, would immediate publicity have saved the brothers, or would it have ruined them even faster? Criminalist Jeff Chang met her at the entrance to the alcove. "What do we have?" Sarah asked. 2 skeletons. Judging by the condition of the bones, they've been here for 10 to 15 years, wrapped in construction plastic. Personal belongings on the shelf nearby. Wallets, watches, keys. Sarah pulled on her gloves and approached the shelves. 2 leather wallets lay in a plastic evidence bag. She opened the first one, a New York State driver's license. Marco Morelli, date of birth, June 5, 1971. The second wallet, Thomas Morelli, August 15, 1974. Brothers, Sarah muttered. She took out her phone and dialed the archive number. I need information on missing persons. Last name Morelli, Morelli. Time period, late 90s, early 2000s. The response came 5 minutes later. Detective Thompson, we have a match. Brothers Marco and Thomas Morelli, missing since September 12, 1999. The case was handled by Detective Michael O'Brien, now retired. 15 years. These young men had been lying in a basement for 15 years while their families hoped for a miracle. Chang, I need a full DNA analysis, and check the walls. There's some kind of symbol there. There was indeed a symbol on the wall, a phoenix with outstretched wings, scratched out with something sharp. But let's go back to that September evening in 1999. The last evening the Morelli brothers were seen alive. September 12th, Sunday. Manhattan was bathed in the golden light of sunset. The windows of the Net Vision office on Wall Street were lit up. The startup was working around the clock. The dot-com era was in full swing. Young programmers were becoming millionaires overnight. Investors were throwing money at any project that had the word Internet in it. Marco Morelli sat at his computer, scanning lines of code. His dark hair was tousled after a long day. On the table were a cold cup of coffee and sandwich wrappers. Next to it lay a wedding ring in a velvet box. In a month, he was going to marry Christine. Marco, are you coming? Thomas stood in the doorway. His glasses had slipped down to the tip of his nose, and his shirt was untucked. 5 more minutes. I need to finish this module. You've been saying that for an hour. Christina is waiting. Marco sighed and turned off the computer, but the screen did not go out immediately. For a second, a strange message appeared. Project Phoenix activated. Did you see that? Marco asked. What? Never mind, probably just a glitch. The brothers left the office at 7:30 p.m. The surveillance camera in the lobby recorded them. Marco was wearing a dark jacket, Thomas a denim one. Both were smiling and talking about something. That was the last recording. Their car, a silver 1997 Honda Accord, was found parked near their home in Brooklyn. The keys were on the kitchen table in the apartment. Wallets, pagers, everything was there. Only the brothers were missing. A neighbor from the 3rd floor, Mrs. Chen, a 70-year-old Chinese woman, told the police a strange story. I saw them around 8 p.m. They were talking to a man at the entrance. He was tall, wearing a gray suit, an expensive suit. He was showing them some papers. Can you describe him? Gray hair, about 55 years old. His face, a cold face, like a man who's used to giving orders. Detective Michael O'Brien, an experienced Irishman, was in charge of the case. He interviewed all the neighbors and all the brothers' colleagues. He checked their finances. The day before Marco disappeared, he withdrew $5,000 in cash from his account. Why would a programmer with a good salary need $5,000 in cash? O'Brien wondered. Christina Vargas, Marco's fiancée, was crying at the police station. He was planning our wedding. We had chosen a restaurant and ordered flowers. He couldn't just disappear. Thomas's life was also going well. A week ago, he had been promoted to senior developer. His salary had doubled. He was planning to buy a bigger apartment. O'Brien studied the brothers' biographies. Their parents had died in a car accident in 1994. Giovanni Morelli, their father, was a talented programmer and one of the pioneers of cryptography. Their mother, Elena, taught mathematics at a college. The accident happened on the highway on a rainy night. The car crashed into a guardrail and fell off a bridge. The investigation ruled it an accident. But there was one strange fact. The brake hoses were damaged. Experts attributed this to the impact of the fall. After their parents' death, the brothers inherited a small sum of money and their father's patent for an encryption algorithm. They sold the patent in 1997 to Cybercore Industries for $150,000. The money went toward their education and their first apartment. O'Brien decided to check out the company. Cybercore Industries was registered in the Cayman Islands. The owner was hiding behind a chain of offshore companies. But the company's accountant, whom he managed to find, let slip. Mr. Crane was very interested in this patent. He said it was the key to a new era of digital security. Victor Crane. O'Brien had heard that name before. Crane was Giovanni Morelli's partner in the early 90s. They founded SecureNet together, but split up due to disagreements in 1993. Giovanni accused Crane of trying to steal his designs. O'Brien tried to meet with Crane, but his secretary said that Mr. Crane had left on an extended business trip to Asia. The investigation reached a dead end. 3 months later, on the eve of the millennium, an event occurred that could change everything. During preparations for the Y2K problem, technicians were checking computers at NetVision. They found a hidden partition on Marco's work computer. It contained encrypted correspondence. They were only able to partially decrypt it. Here are a few phrases. They know the truth about 94. The phoenix must burn to be reborn. Meeting on the 12th. Be ready. And signed, VK. O'Brien was certain that those were Victor Crane's initials, but there was no proof. Crane never returned from his business trip. His company, Cybercore Industries, dissolved in January 2000. The case was classified as unsolved. O'Brien retired in 2005 without ever learning the truth, but the story didn't end there. In 2010, the brothers' cousin, Anna Morelli, arrived from Italy. She couldn't come to terms with her cousin's disappearance. "In our family, we don't give up," she said, hiring private investigator Robert Stone. Stone was a former FBI agent specializing in financial crimes. He started where O'Brien had left off, with Victor Crane. It turned out that Crane hadn't gone anywhere. He had simply changed his name and appearance. Now he was Victor Grant, owner of the investment company Phoenix Capital. Phoenix. The word appeared too often to be a coincidence. Stone found a lawyer who had met with the brothers a week before their disappearance. James Porter, an elderly lawyer, was dying of cancer in a hospice. They came to me with their father's documents. They wanted to know about the will. I told them that there was another document besides the patent, a deposit in a Swiss bank, but both brothers and a special code were needed to access it. What code? I don't know. Giovanni said the boys would understand when the time came. Porter died 2 days after that conversation. Stone kept digging. He found a former employee of SecureNet, Giovanni Morelli, and Victor Crane's company. Giovanni created a revolutionary algorithm, but Crane wanted to sell it to the military. Giovanni was against it. They had a falling out. Crane threatened him. And then? Then the accident happened. Stone pieced the puzzle together. Crane killed Giovanni and Elena, staging an accident. But he didn't know about the Swiss bank account. When the brothers grew up and started asking questions, he decided to get rid of them too.